just got better and grouchier with age. Age is a funny thing. I have a theory that when it comes to art, music, sport, and mathematics, but not comedy, that if you've not reached your creative best by the time you're 30, then you're never going to make it. I mean, name one popular musician whose songs got better as they got older.
Thank you, sir, Franco. Hello, gentlemen. I didn't even say hi today. I apologize for that. But we are on the Roman Anton podcast. I'm very excited today. We have Nigel Oakins in the podcast studio today. Welcome, Nigel.
Hey, welcome. Thanks, thanks for the invitation.
Well, I appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy. I know you have a lot going on, and so it's an honor for us to have you here. I was trying to figure out today, Roman Anton podcast, we do in 3 parts. We do an interview, we do a performance piece, and then we go somewhere. And so we've figured all those out today. But one of the most interesting things, because it has been sort of a heartbreaking denouement for me, is the appearance, consolidation, change, and alteration of the International Herald Tribune over my life on the road, and now the absence of it in a hard copy in Bangkok. I'm sure there's some somewhere, and maybe you print them or something, but that to me was life on the road since 1984. That to me signified I wasn't home, but it was the tether that let me read something that sounded familiar. Yeah. And in fact, in the 80s, I would look baseball scores up because that was the only way I could find out how my team was doing overseas. And the reason I bring that up, this isn't about me today, it's about you, is you had a period of time as a senior member of the International Herald Tribune publication. And I didn't know that. Is that true? Or did you work for the...
No, I think you're making that up. But,
okay.
I did work for them, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It was also probably my favorite newspaper of all time, though it's definitely more American slanted than European. But it was based in Paris, the newspaper headquarters. And I think it just got consolidated into the New York Times, and they wanted to push the New York Times International name rather than a sort of a second newspaper title. And so sadly it's no longer there. But you could still get the New York Times delivered here in Thailand by like a fax printed newspaper. It's pretty expensive, but a lot of people like to get the Sunday New York Times. I do that. So
yeah, right. And it feels different. And there's something about the newsstand. And and maybe we'll get to your story in publishing, but it was the gradual sort of Western European living there, moving, getting it from many newsstands to moving into Asia and getting it from a few and then having it delivered to having it not available has been, I think, sort of a testament to social media, right? It's just, it went away, but you can get it. So
and the New York Times is kind of a case study in a traditional legacy newspaper brand that seems somehow to be moving through the trauma of the internet and digital age and coming out of it with quite a bit of power still. So there's some great podcasts on the successes of the New York Times.
Right. And my Wall Street Journal subscription, so I'm admitting I have one of those, has the audio section you can listen to for every article now, right? That was a shock. I don't remember when that happened, right?
Yeah, so I worked for them for 2 years,
right.
Around 1998 to 2000. And they were going at that stage they were planning to set up a kind of bigger editorial operation across Asia, which would make it a more standalone kind of edition of the Asian edition of the IHT. It never happened, and so I ended up. I wasn't there for very long. I found myself trying to sell partnerships across Asia to other newspaper companies to print the International Herald Tribune, which is not something I'd ever done before, but it was kind of fun. And we formed 7 or 8 different partnerships with printing houses, newspaper houses across Asia, not least of which was the Asahi Shimbun. And so it kind of transformed the fortunes of the IHT when they picked up 60,000 copies in Japan. and it almost hastened the demise of it, unfortunately, because it became it became such a big part of their overall paid circulation that it skewed it too much to Asia, I think.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. And so you said something, because I don't know the industry, I'm unclear on, is you were there, and were you in a writing, editing capacity originally in your mind, and then it morphed into, hey, Nigel, try and drum up some extra viewership?
I did 10 years at the Bangkok Post prior to that as managing director. So I was in a management role, but taking care of the Asian edition. But the thing that interested me was the fact that they were planning to bring in about 30 journalists into the region.
Yeah.
So that would have given real heft to the Asian edition. But as it happened, they didn't do it. So it was kind of it was a bit of a struggle for me, because I was then said, right, well, can you sell more newspapers to hotel managers?
Right.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
That's not what I really do.
Yeah.
And it kind of didn't last too long.
Yeah, I mean, that is the conundrum, right? I think of regional reporters or local reporters that worked for international publications that influenced me growing up. I think of like Dexter Filkins, obviously, for the New York Times on Afghanistan. Just for the last 20 years, he's been the guy that if I saw that, I was like, this is going to be what it is, right? But, you have those folks. I don't know what you thought about bringing 30 in, and you would have probably your guy who was responsible for the Bangkok area or around here, and then you'd have someone for somewhere else. And
I think so. I think they wanted reporters in, so they were going to be different reporters to the New York Times reporters.
Right,
so that was just a pure duplication. It's probably a bit of a folly to even think they would get away with it. And as the industry changed very quickly at that time, it just wasn't viable. But it survived long after my 2 years there.
Yeah.
I think it didn't actually end until 7 or 8 years later.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right, and I'm not trying to dwell on International Herald Tribune or New York Times or something, but it seemed to be interesting timing, and it was something that I really was caught up in that same time period as a user. And I'm sure it was the changes you saw were not shocking, but pretty significant, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And so you're from the UK, London area?
I am, actually, from London.
Yeah, and you went to school, and did you know you were going to be a publishing venture multimedia guy at a young age, or did this where we're going to go to later, did this come up over time, or?
No, I didn't know that. I just enjoyed working and earning money and doing a variety of different things. I studied sort of creative advertising, copywriting, and marketing, and within a year I had a job working in a retail kind of a company called Superdrug. They sold hair shampoo, a bit like Boots.
Right.
As a manager of one of their branches in Streatham, but that was that was just to get. I didn't want to do that, but that was the only job I could find at the time. So, and that got me into publishing. I worked for a magazine, a trade magazine called Retail Chemist was my first job.
Retail Chemist.
Yeah, which was also sold to someone else on like the third week I got there, and that was the start of going to join companies that sold as soon as I arrived.
There you go. You get stock, no salary. Get stock.
Hire me. Yeah. So then I worked for then that got me into it. So I wasn't with that magazine for very long, but it was a big company, Reed Business Press.
Okay.
And I got transferred onto something called Hairdresser's Journal, which was still is the best job I ever had. It was just fabulous,
Better than Retail Chemist.
It was just a slight step up from Retail Chemist. I should have got. That was not bad either.
I'm sorry if you're still out there. We love you, Retail Chemist. There's the camera shot, right?
I think that went. But someone told me the other day that Hairdresser's Journal International is still going.
I imagine it's huge, right?
I don't know. But so I launched my first magazine when I worked for I was. Are you interested to hear about my very first magazine?
I'm absolutely interested because it seems like hubris then, and it seems like hubris now to launch a magazine, unless.
Well, that was in 1977.
There you go, right?
So magazines were big then.
Big. But
And,
what does a young smartass know about launching a magazine is the question then, right?
So I launched it for the company I worked for. I was in the US attending trade shows around the hairdressing and beauty industry. And the Hairdresser's Journal used to have like 4 or 8 pages in the middle of the latest hairstyles from the greatest hairdressers around the world. And to sell the subscriptions, I came up with the idea of cutting all of those pictures out and putting them into a catalog. And so I made 4 of them and said, if you subscribe for a year in America, you'll get one of these beautiful, at the end of the year, you'll have, collected all these pictures and you show your clients. No one wanted to subscribe to Hairdresser's Journal. They all wanted to buy the catalog. So I went back and said, I think there's an opportunity here for something called hair.
Right.
Brilliant, right? Great name, eh? And it sold out on day one, and they printed, so it sold 80,000 copies on day one, printed another print run of 200,000. It was a quarterly, and they eventually launched it in, I think, 30 countries around the world. So, but then I'd long left by then when they did that. I just kind of came up with that idea.
Yeah. I mean, this seems to beg some bigger questions of, it seems very, at a young age, it seems like you were connecting dots at a young age, coming out of school. Was this what was startup or publishing in your family, or did you already have some notion of like take it small and go big, or was this just you being resourceful and on the street and going for it?
Yes, there was nothing like Succession, or it was. I can't even remember what my dad did for a living.
There you go.
He was in the gambling industry.
Okay.
And my mum was a good woman, and she did a number of jobs to keep the family afloat.
Sure.
And so yeah, that was. I always enjoyed. So I always enjoyed kind of creating ads and writing a little bit and selling stuff. So most of that went into the publication of a magazine in those days, and I kind of rose pretty quickly through the ranks at that company, and I was heading up the ad sales team of 5 or 6 of the biggest magazines in the company when I left at the age of 28 to go and work in Hong Kong.
There's a lot here I want to sort of probe into, and I don't understand so much about this. So the time period, to me, and this is a false assertion of the highest order, but any time within the windows of the Beatle breakup is an instrumental portion of life, but the UK in the 70s during that time period seemed to still have, in particular in London, still have a very robust, vibrant scene, whatever that means, right? Very active, very sort of, it seemed to be frequently reported on. I seem to be hearing quite a bit about London and the London music scene and the schooling and, Cambridge, Oxford, London School, all the sort of, the high-end schools. And as I started to get out of my education and figure out what was next, those... maybe apart from the food, it just seemed to be focus was on London as much as it was anywhere else in my thinking. And I'm not, because I'm an Anglophile or I like the Beatles or something, but was this a high water mark of sort of the sales and marketing and magazine era?
I think it was a golden age, and London was definitely a great place to be. And I got to travel quite a lot around the world in those days, hence the feeling that it would be nice to travel before I got too old. And one of the reasons I left the company was they moved out of London. They moved to a place called Sutton, and it was a real absolute shithole. And I just thought, I am not going to spend the rest of my life commuting to Sutton. It may be actually, I should say, sorry Sutton thing here, but
we love Sutton.
It may be a good place now.
Yeah.
But it was absolutely dire in those days.
Great fish and chips there, I imagine. And look, at that point, I look back at the number of times where I threw caution to the wind and geography didn't matter in a move.
Right.
For example, when I moved to Bangladesh, fantastic assignment, but I overcame some preconception that geography mattered. But when it was time to leave here, I said, geography matters, I'm not leaving. So, it's as much as I have a rule, I don't have a rule for the change, but I understand. In particular, I imagine at that point in your life, you're young, you've started these startups. hey, let's move to Sutton, it feels like that is such a dead end, right? Like, wait a minute, that's the exact opposite direction I want my career to go, right? Is moving, even if it's the same job or even if it's a promotion, it's like, I don't get that. It's funny, I think that's youthful folly on some level, but it's not having moved abroad and figuring out how cool places can be. Right when you land there, job in Nigeria was fantastic too for me, but you think on the going that it's going to be tough and rough, and maybe it is, but it's interesting. So you said no.
Well, I was working on something, Amateur Photographer, another magazine that's still going, and it absolutely exploded at that time. There was a change in the rules of subsidies for cameras, and so the magazine was running 600 pages of ads a week on stage. It went from like 20 pages to 600, and everyone thought I was a superstar.
Advertising.
This guy can sell ads. It was nothing to do with me. It happened on like the third week I was there as the as the publisher ad director, and I went into a meeting with a guy who owned a big camera distributor. He said, "Well, we've just got these subsidies from the camera companies, and so we're going to go up from a page a week to 40 pages a week." And I thought he was taking the piss. I said, yeah, right. I gave him a deal, and he booked it. And then I got back, and one of my colleagues said, "Hey, I've just got 20 pages from Dixon's." And so we really ramped up from like 40 pages to at the peak 600. I was only there a year or two. So they gave me Cajun Avery Birds, Rugby World, Cycling Times, and supermarketing. I thought, that was even, actually the only people ever, and they were nice. They were really thinking that I was getting promoted. And whereas the International Herald Tribune couldn't give a shit about me. Right. I know we hired you under false pretenses, but go and sell some more newspapers to that. I made a mistake.
The Calcutta market's a little low, Nigel. Get in there and drum up some business.
So that you're right, and I just thought that it's not. I enjoyed what I did with Hairdressers Journal International, where I was traveling around America and Europe, and I thought, wouldn't it be fun to sort of get a little bit more experience overseas before I settled down.
So prior to that, did you have the bug to hit the road, or was the road Paris as opposed to something Hong Kong or some protectorate or some Commonwealth?
I traveled quite. That job was an international job, so we had offices in Miami and Florida, Chicago,
right?
And Europe, and a couple of places in Europe. And so I was traveling mainly to the US and Europe.
Yeah.
But I did visit Thailand and Bangkok, and I was with a friend, and he said, "Well, you never know. There's a newspaper here. Maybe you can go and work for them." Huh. And when I got back to London, I said to my PA, if you see any jobs going in Asia, let me know. Just keep your eye open. I'm not super happy in this new job. I know you've only been working for me for a week, but I'm not really that unstable. And she really set out to find me a job. I'm not sure what she thought of me, but I got a job. I got a few job offers because of the contacts she managed to sort of drag out. One in Chicago, one in Los Angeles, and one in Hong Kong at the time, which I turned them all down because they were all they were great locations, but the jobs weren't quite what I was looking for. But one in Hong Kong, it was didn't know it, but it was a joint venture between my company and the Straits Times, and so they found out about it and called me in and said,
Nigel,
what are you doing? Are you not happy here?
I just told her to look. I didn't tell her to submit my resume.
And they said,
for me.
What, we've been thinking of moving you out there anyway to join this joint venture. So would you be interested to go in there? And we're launching a business magazine, and we love the way you launch magazines. Would you be interested to go in there? There's 3 publications: a travel magazine, a business magazine, and a freight magazine. It's trade publishing, but with a business angle. And it was a good job, So it was. I thought, that sounds about right. And so then I had like a 2-week or maybe a bit longer period where maybe it's a bit long, like 5 weeks to get ready to go. By the time I arrived in New York, when I arrived there, the guy from Singapore was there to meet me, and he said, "By the way, we've just bought out the." So I joined a completely different company to the one that I'd actually signed up for. So I walked in, I had Reed Business Press sold their 50% of the company. They didn't mention it, but they sold it after they kicked me out there. So.
And you're going to be overseeing Chemist Weekly, but on an international basis. Wait a minute.
They were gone from my life by then.
We just bought it. We've heard it's a hot property.
Yeah, and so then came my time in Asia, and I launched quite a number of magazines in that position for 6 years. So I was 28 when I got there, and so I did a magazine, a regional magazine for Diners Club across Asia. I think I did an airline magazine, launched I can't even remember. We had 5 or 6 different magazines we launched at that time, and so I was kind of into launching magazines. That was my thing back then, and I did enjoy it, and it was always fun. Not all of them worked.
And so do you have in your head, either when you're 28 or now, do you have the template for business plan creation for magazine startup that's not online, that's actually a paper copy? So it's going to cost X dollars to print, it's going to cost, you're going to need roughly X dollars for advertising, you're going to need X dollars for payroll. I mean, is this now just a fundamental sort of business process in your head that you can run through when you do magazine launch planning, and you know sort of the cost of operations and the cost of keeping it running? Or what was the driver? Was it more the idea, like, if we do Koktail, or if we do Chemist Weekly, or if we do hair, this is the way I think we'll make money? I guess there's different ways to be the starter of a magazine. One is sort of craven returns on advertising, or the other is conceptual attraction to a large marketplace. And I imagine they're very different if it's calculated or if it's thematic.
I think it's changed over time, I would imagine. I haven't got a clue about I just thought this will work and I'll have a crack at it.
Yeah.
So there's no really deep thinking about, well, here's the template, this one fits, ticks all the boxes, it's bound to be a success. I mean, at the Bangkok Post, and you see as you go through your career, when you hire someone new, they've always got their little pet projects. And Bangkok Post hired me as a managing director. I was only 34 years old, and I had all my little pet projects, one of which was launching magazines. So I started launching magazines for the Bangkok Post. So we did Clio and Elle and others, 5 or 6 different magazines. And Clio, those were the golden days for launching magazines.
Yeah.
I mean, we launched. We had a choice of Cosmo or Elle. They were both pitching to come into Thailand, and I went with Elle because I thought it had, more resonance with a Thai, female, sort of young female, and it did extremely well. The first magazine we launched was Tatler, and that was a real surprise when it went so well. It went extremely well initially, and then I thought, well, this works here too, So we did Elle, and then Clio was a young woman's magazine from Australia. And I remember the first issue of that, we were thinking, well, should we print 50 or 60,000? And I just felt, you know what, there's a lot of young women who might like this. We had a really good cover, the top model of the time on the cover. And so I said, let's do 200,000. They all sold out. So you kind of just get a gut feel for what the buzz when you're reading it before you print it. And but now I think it's a different thing. I mean, my view on magazines is they still have a place, but you have to kind of have a reason to live, And if you're just living on past glory, that's not good enough. You've got to resonate still with the audience, and people have got to want to read what you put into it, I think.
Yeah.
So I think it's changed. I don't think it's so easy anymore.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I mean, and I have my own deficiency as a podcast host of thinking I know the answer. So no, Nigel, your favorite color is black. I don't think so.
I do like black, actually. It's on the cover there as well.
I don't think it's a good way to do questions. But I wasn't expecting the answer you gave, and I think, when you hear, or at least the classical mythology of America is the Watergate, the reporters and the gut feeling and chasing it. But it seems like you have, zeitgeist, whatever the word is, as a managing director, as a managing publisher, as a senior executive at a paper, you have to know what's going on. Period. You sort of have to know what's going on. And that requires an awareness that's 360. It requires being awake, not stumbling into your office at 6 a.m. and leaving at 8 and not going outside. And it's interesting because that's what I was asking is, do you plan for this, or are you just part of the the stratosphere of news stuff and things of interest, and you tap into it and hope it hits, right? And I've sensed, what little I know about you, and when I read about you online, and when I looked at the new magazine, and when I looked at old editions of the Tatler, remaining current is important, but current, topical, and interesting are important. So when does the business plan stop having words in it? Current, topical, interesting, money making, but it can't be say these 5 things and it has to say these 4 things. It just seems like you can outfox yourself.
Well, I launched newspapers as well.
There you go.
So I launched a tabloid newspaper in Hong Kong in 2001, which outsold, actually, it was very successful, very profitable, because it had a lock on the classified ads that were, forced by the government, that you had to advertise in print if you did anything that needed a notice. So we actually,
interesting.
We had a really racy. That also got sold 6 months after I launched it. So, and then I also worked on the launch of 2 newspapers in India. So one was called Mint, which is still doing pretty well. The other was the Mumbai edition of the Hindustan Times. So I've done newspapers as well, and I've launched some websites and some social media pages and stuff. And I think, now my view is now you've got to stand for something.
Yeah.
You've got to have you have a reason that people will, they might not agree with you, but you've got to have a point of view. And, so I don't want to give too many secrets away on this, really, because there are a lot of people out there, in my opinion, doing it completely wrongly.
Yeah, I agree.
And, and that's sort of saying you stand for something. But, I think you've got to advocate. Yeah. Now, you've got to say, right, we stand for, absolute equality, or we stand for, so not treating people like shit. We stand for freedom of expression, whatever it might be, or we stand for, whatever you're doing, stand for it, and stand behind it, and make sure you don't waver.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Yes, right, agreed. We're in violent agreement here. So, and that took me away from the path that we're going on, but I'm glad we're here. And I noticed recently on your LinkedIn publication that you pointed out some potential oversights in some of our local publications, commitments to public speaking that seemed to not be representative. And I thought, okay, Nigel, good points you raised there. So, and how far is too far, and how much is too much, and how much is not enough. But maybe we can pick that up. It's interesting. I wanted to ask you about again, the mythology. Is there a Nigel who has 10,000 hours standing over the draft edition, line editing, or was that never part of your universe? Or maybe if it is in Koktail, that's a different part. But did you, when you started these papers as a managing editor or a publisher, did you have responsibility for the articles, or was that a different part of your organization that would edit and do editorializing and things of that nature? Yeah,
so I never edited anything.
Okay.
Particularly. But I did. I was kind of responsible for the editor.
Uh-huh.
So at the Bangkok Post, for example, there were many libel cases against.
Right.
Typically, they'd go after the publisher and the printer and the editor together. I think that was part of the law at the time. So I would always end up being the one carrying the cam for the article. So you do have to work closely with your editorial colleagues. I had great editorial colleagues when I was at the Bangkok Post.
Yeah.
Worked with 2 editors, 3 actually, but one left shortly after I joined, but Paisan and Pichai. So I trusted them, and but I would certainly, they kind of knew. I think they kind of knew what my views were.
Yeah.
My views are probably slightly more extreme than theirs. They were more mainstream than me, both of them, I think. But I try to keep those mostly to my, to myself.
Sure.
And stuff. And when I was working, it was called the iMail. It used to be the Hong Kong Standard, and it then became the Hong Kong Standard again. I'd sit there with the editor at night trying to come up with some really nasty shit headline. I love that. And 11 o'clock, then we go down to the Foreign Correspondence Club and have a couple of bottles of wine. And then we get the phone calls in the morning. I remember there was one friend of mine actually launched a company called Alive, and they raised $20 million, and it was a media company to try and Alive Travel. I think it was called Alive Travel because I remember we wrote Alive is dead or something, or Live dies. It was just, and then I got a phone call from the lawyer in the morning. They're not dead yet. I said, so the next one we put an apology, said it's only on life support. So, but you've got to be careful. I mean, I know I've pissed. You mentioned the newspaper earlier without the name. Those guys are pissed off with me for sure.
Yeah, of course.
And but I've every right to make those points. I mean, I think it's disgraceful. I mean, if you're running a newspaper in this day and age, and I won't mention the name, but if you, for God's sake, get with it.
Yeah.
Don't run a story. Don't put your chief executive and your some person who couldn't write a sentence in English standing there with a bunch of guys in suits and say the future of whatever it is
diversity and inclusion.
Give me a break. I mean, what are they on? And how can I remember when I worked in the Bangkok Post, I was called into a couple of things, and I was asked to take a stance. You will not run. Your editor, tell the editor this is not running on the front cover,
right,
and the front page. And I stood with the editor every time, which didn't put me in good. I mean, Peach, I probably remember. I won't say that it's a very sensitive thing again, but he was kind of saying, "Well, we can't really do it. We've been told we can't." And I said, "To hell with it. Run the story."
Yeah, I mean that's the point I was trying to get to, and I'm glad you did it. And I didn't even ask the questions really to get there, because it's just a natural. It's a natural follow. Whatever your role is in line editing, as a senior exec in most countries, you're on the firing line, and so with it comes the drama. So here's what the follow-up to the answer would be. Yes, you were aware of it. Yes, you stood up. Yes, sometimes you were named in litigation. But is it ever predictable? Sure, if you write Alive is dead, you sort of know where that's going to, tomorrow morning you're getting the call. But do you ever have things that are utterly unpredictable that have the massive blowback and you're like, wow, didn't see that coming? Or is it always predictable? Is the hot headline always predictable in terms of the response it's going to get? Or is there no general rule?
No, there's no general rule, I think. I mean, people, so essentially, people are arseholes. So you just, you get people who are genuine arseholes and think they have the right to act however they want to act.
Right.
If they don't like what you do, they'll come after you. And other people are sweethearts, and you can get away with a little bit more. And so you just never know. I mean, but I would say I've got a sense of what you can and can't do after so long. So even now, I mean, like 40 odd years into it, I would often be picking up stuff that other people are not picking up. Saying, you really haven't got that right. That's not the way you should approach this.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know if you have the crystal ball. It's still one person can get mad, and if it's the right one person, then there can be a lot of blowback. So I guess there's always that odd exception. But
but the truth is difficult to fight against. And so there's some things you can't go up and win against. So you should probably not go down those avenues.
Yeah, well, I guess if there's a First Amendment law in the United States, it's built around that, right? As New York Times versus Sullivan said, truth is going to get you a long way, right? So if you can show source, or I'm oversimplifying, but I think that's probably the law of the United States. Is if it's a public figure and if you can show your sources and you can show some veracity, you're going to survive at least defamation, or you're going to stay in the ball game. So maybe expensive to stay in, but it's
an opinion doesn't normally hurt that anyway. I mean, you can refute it as well. Right?
Yeah.
And say, well, that's wrong. But, I mean.
Okay, so then you do so UK, and you have a series of successes followed by sales of the companies. So you say I'm hitting the road, and you got roughly a 15-year period or 20-year period in Hong Kong, and then a 20-year period in Bangkok. Generally,
it's more like 30 in Thailand and 10 in.
Okay, so jump around. So. But a healthy, even if you go home to golf, your favorite course in the UK, it's a healthy time away. So a long time on the road. The decision to firmly settle back in Thailand, significant reasons and input, or was it more happenstance, or was it job related?
No, it wasn't job related. I mean, to sort of finally settle here was just it's a great place to be.
Yeah.
I've got a nice house and nice living arrange. I enjoy what I do. I think Thailand's time probably should. They seem to mess it up all the time. They're on the brink of breaking through.
Yeah.
And there are other places I think, well, I wouldn't mind being there either, but nothing jumps at me at the moment as being that place.
All right, this is a side question. If I were to say the club, and how much does the club of a percentage is it in a reason to stay? Is over 5% reason to stay?
What's that?
The Royal Bangkok Sports Club is a huge factor in my life for loving being here.
Oh, really?
Just the ease and simplicity of that place. So, you were the former general committee and chairman of this 100-plus-year-old club in town, and it has golf and tennis and all those things.
Right.
Does that factor in the desirability of staying in town, or is it?
I should probably say yes.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, that's a nice.
You've probably always had one, right? Hong Kong. You probably had a place you went to that had golf and tennis, and in the UK.
Sure. Well, not in the UK, but I mean, it's a part of it, but I don't think it's a major part of it anymore. And I've kind of done my time being on the general committee there. And
okay, I'm not trying to disparage anyone here, but we both love the club. Got a T-shirt on, etc. I took a couple of notes. I think I covered stuff that I wanted to look at. There always seem to be, if I try to track your timings, like you said, the side job or the side gigs, and some of them were for the companies you're working with, and then I assume some were on your own. So you've had the Oakins, or the Nigel Oakins, or the Oakins Media Partners has been open while you've had other positions as well?
No, I've never really worked for a company full time and then started something on the side, as far as I remember.
Okay.
So this has been when I've made a deliberate decision to branch out on my own.
Okay, good. Then I was wrong on that, so I didn't do my math with the dates. And so then COVID comes along, and do you hunker down in Thailand, or do you go somewhere else?
Oh, I stayed here.
Yeah. Okay, how was that experience?
Well, it created the new company to some degree, because I was sitting at home and I started blogging a little bit on LinkedIn and getting, sort of not very much. My son was at me to, you got to do something, I stayed here. I enjoyed it. Actually, it was quite nice. I'm not that sociable, so it was brilliant. I thought I don't to meet anyone, so it was great. I'm lucky enough to have a house on a golf course. The golf course is closed, but I could jog around the golf course every evening, and it's pretty. It's not remote, but it felt very safe when there was a kind of concern around everyone's seriously worried what would happen. So I enjoyed it, actually.
Did you have mortality concerns? I mean, did you have death, illness, sickness concerns for this contagion or this epidemic? I mean, did you say I could die from COVID if I get it, and during this? Because I wonder, because I had unnatural reactions, and I was spraying myself with that machine they sold here when I went outside and stuff, and I thought, I'm not sure, but I'm doing it. It's easy, sort of have it by the front door. But, so did you go out and go shopping, or did you send someone to do that if you had staff? Or
no, I did do my own shopping. But in Hong Kong, just around the time of SARS, I had a atypical pneumonia diagnosed maybe a week before SARS, and I was on intensive care in a hospital there with a lung condition. And I had a month later, when I went back to Hong Kong and they took my blood, I had some antibodies to SARS. So it wasn't actually confirmed that I had SARS, but so I was seriously ill, and I didn't feel very well then. I have to say, I was 4 days in intensive care. But the medication they gave me was not the medication that other people have had serious, lung-related sicknesses. So I thought, if I get this might not be too good. But But I wrote. I actually one of my early efforts on LinkedIn was about the fear of dying, as opposed to the fear of I can't remember the word for it, for the fear of dying, but it's the irrational fear of illness.
Right.
There's a phobia for it, and I felt that the irrational, since you mentioned it, the irrational fear of illness was a bigger problem than dealing with trying to live in a COVID environment. You just want to make sure. Who knows? We could still get it, and it could mutate worse and everything else. But I don't fear it particularly. I just sort of think, well, I've got to try my best to not catch it and not give it to anyone else.
Yeah, I think I took that same approach. I mean, I was going out for walks at night along the Subs and Klong.
Yeah.
And then I found myself walking on that railroad track along under Plonchit and walked through a very tightly packed housing development. I thought this is probably not the smartest shortcut, but apart from that, I played it pretty clean. So during that time period, then idea takes, and so it's not everyone that says, I have a magazine idea, and then it lifts off within the year, but you now have, and so you're wearing a shirt today, and I have in front of me something called Koktail, Koktail, right?
Right.
And this is the magazine we've been talking about or pointing to on the desktop here, and this is the magazine you've started.
Correct.
And is now, I have issue 1, and so I don't know if there's 2 out yet or so it's pretty new to the streets here, I think. And so this is the idea you came up with during COVID.
It was. I didn't come up with an idea for a magazine. I came up with an idea for a media business that stood for something. Because every media person, every brand representative that I met, was saying we need to be sustainable, we need to have ethics.
Of course.
But they don't deliver particularly. Some do, some don't. Most companies have, chief sustainability officer. Or, but they're not really. They're still really trying to sell whatever product they're making as best they can, and they feel they need to kind of lean into that dialogue to help them sell stuff. We were struggling with the Tatler brand here. For 2 reasons. One, it kind of wasn't resonating anymore with a sort of luxury lifestyle kind of thing, and also the owners of that, we had a license, the owners of that were trying also to change it to be younger and something else. But in my mind, it was going to be, as a licensee, something that was going to cost me a lot of money if I went down the same road as them. So I was struggling with that. They weren't really appreciative of the fact that I didn't agree with them. And I was just thinking, well, if worst comes to worst and we're not able to kind of agree on the way Tatler should go forward, I felt it needed to change dramatically. But I'm not going to just sit around doing nothing. I've got 30 people working for me. I try and create a business plan for them, and I felt that a media brand, so I called it. I came up with the name Media Imagination. Like, what can I think of? Oh, Media Imagination, and then doing all those headlines. I mean, we were brainstorming the name for a media website, and I said, "Wow, what about Koktail with K?" Because I'd looked at something that Monocle did as a sort of media brand that I think is brilliant, and they did something called Confect in German. Germans use a K, where we use a C, so they actually meant it to be Confect. It's the word for sugar or confectionery, I guess. But I thought that looks good. Okay, let's call it. What name would resonate globally if it takes off? So I wasn't really just thinking of Thailand. And I came in there. I thought, oh, that's good. All the ingredients for a great life. Which you'll notice is missing from the headline there. We forgot to put it in. Actually, I shouldn't say that, but we did. So we
wanted a pristine issue 1. Issue 2 will just be collector's item.
Yeah, well, but it doesn't. It really doesn't matter. So the website was created, Koktail, and it was, and the verticals we put in there. And one of them is advocacy. I don't want to beat up on other media brands, but advocacy is not typically something that most magazines get stuck into. So they're more, The Tatler, for example, has just launched something across Asia, the influence list.
Yeah.
You know, so that, to me, that's, you know, and so you look at that, and it's got people like Li Ka-shing and the guy who runs CP Group. You know, who gives a shit? You know, that isn't going to make any difference to most of our lives. You know, so you've got to get, you've got to get real people that are doing stuff. You know, so I was thinking it's got to be, you know, so we're about to launch. We've got more than just Koktail in our little group of businesses that we're starting off. So we're coming out with a list of 100 people that are going to make Thailand better next year. And so there's no age, and the other thing that pisses me off was like 40 under 40.
Right.
The 50 best women in business. You know, we're past that. I used to do that 30 years ago. You know, it's now people, right? And as I'm getting old, I think anyone who treats old people badly, fuck you. And
See, you used it.
yeah, I knew I would.
Only one time.
You know, it's like, and so you know, it. Come on, 40 under 40. Who cares? Being young is not an achievement. It's what you've achieved, right? And so, so we're going for advocacy. So we are sort of like, and the best example I'll give, and then the reason we've got a magazine is I thought this isn't going to work unless we've got a tangible product that we can actually show people. Yeah. And you can get behind it. It's not going to be the bulk of what we do. It's a quarterly magazine. It's going to be a fraction of what we're doing. But it's the tangible part of what we're doing. Yeah. So the other stuff, you know, there'll be a lot more. We're creating we will be creating, you know, maybe 150 editorial pieces a month from January onwards. There's only 15 pieces in there.
Yeah, that's interesting. So is there a subscriber service in the thinking?
We forgot about that. Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't
it's like the headline.
I just like that. Yeah, the interesting thing is, you know, so we didn't think print was the most important thing here, but we've had, I'm going to say 30 or 40 requests for subscriptions.
Yeah, of course.
And that far eclipsed anything we ever got for Tatler. So, you know, you might get the odd embassy giving you a request for. So I think we're going to look at it, but it's just more. It's a little bit more trouble. It's what it's worth. And what we've also done is to put the magazine out as a free link. Yeah. It's not that easy to read on something called Flipsnack, but you know, we've already had as of Thursday, we had a couple of thousand downloads of the magazine on Flipsnack. So someone texted me today from somewhere in Europe saying, I read the magazine on Flipsnack, and I disagree with what you said there about old people or something.
Yeah.
Not being able to write music. Did you see that piece?
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, it's, I mean, I'm struggling here with sort of the decision-making involved in this because I don't know the medium. I don't know how it works. I don't know so much about what's happening every day in my life about it because I'm getting so much information online to download. Let me use an example that's harmless. The World Energy Outlook used to be this coveted thing from the IEA. It comes out once a year, 400 pages long. You know, it's the most well-researched thing you can get. And it's a panel of 900 reviewers, you know, all PhD level that sign off. And I'm making these numbers up, but a lot of reviewers. Used to be thousands of dollars to get, I think. And now I just downloaded it in 5 minutes or 2 minutes or immediately. Yeah. And, you know, now I couldn't turn on my computer that day because I have so much stuff downloaded. So now you have to take all this off and put it in your cloud storage. But it was I don't know how this works anymore. I mean, some of the things that I'm getting are so valuable and they're free and they're so correct, you know, in terms of what I need it for. Yeah. And so I don't know as you move through the medium. So my favorite magazines for free would be tabulature magazines for music, or like you know, how to play a song I can't play. Frank knows how to play everything, so he never goes and looks for those. But you know, things of that nature, and I have my ways to get to those. But you know, if you're telling me there's going to be 150 advocacy pieces in a quarter or a month,
they're not all advocacy pieces.
Right.
So just to finish that anecdote off, perhaps, you know, we were starting to get PR companies and marketing people send us, you know, sort of PR stuff for the launch of a new brand or sort of a new hotel, whatever it might be. And so typically they would all be extolling the virtues of whatever new it is they're doing. and really excited about it. But nothing would ever mention, well, not nothing, but very few would ever mention, what good they're doing for the environment or society or people around them or the staff. Or it's always like, we got the best infinity pool in the world, or serving the best 5-star, food dishes. So we kind of said, well, we can ignore those, just put them aside. And then it was Mike. I said, well, if you just ignore it, it's rude.
Right.
So they've made an effort. So reply to them, say, look, thanks for sending that to us. But if you've got anything good you're doing for society and the community around you, tell us about it. The response has been extraordinary.
Really?
So you get the immediate reply every time saying, well, thank you very much for that. We completely understand. Thanks for letting us know. We're going to really think about what we're doing, and we'll come back with a story for you.
Huh.
And and there is too much stuff. I mean, that's why I don't think we've got the resources to produce a quarterly magazine. It's it's not too expensive to do it, but it's just the editorial resources. It's quite a lot. You can make a lot more mistakes digitally.
Yeah.
And get away with it, right? You couldn't, in print, for example, forget to put the tagline on.
You'd be fired for that if you were that stupid.
So
the old correspondence club days where you were drunk writing headlines like,
so
Awake is dead.
So we've got stuff. I mean, it's not going to be easy to do it every month. I mean, we're trying to come up with stories that people might enjoy sitting down and read for half an hour or 40 minutes or something. And and one in there was we were bashing ideas around. It just so happened that the Olympics, Paralympians had won 18 medals. And I just threw the idea is, why don't we do a story on them? The able-bodied Olympians won 2 medals, and everyone went nuts. This girl, good luck to her, the Taekwondo girl, was fated. She came back, and someone else won a medal as well. And everyone was raving about them. And these Paralympians won 18, and no one, it was like total silence almost. And so I said, why don't we do a story on that? There must be something in it. How come these guys won 18 medals? It's not as if the rest of the world sends their dud Paralympians along, right? Whereas they send their really good athletes to the Olympics.
The winners show up.
Why? There's something in this. It's a really, actually, I find the writer who wrote that, a young girl who's a bit feisty and has got an opinion on things. I'd love her to write some more stuff for us as well. She actually delved into the lives of the Paralympians. For one poor girl, had her arm burnt off at the age of 4. Yeah, and the hardships that she faced is really quite moving. But there's a real genuine reason why they did so well. It's that when the lockdown came, they shoved all the Paralympians into the Olympic centres and trained them for a year and a half with no one around them. So these guys were whizzing around the track on their wheelchairs, 8 hours a day. And when they got to the Olympics, they were, absolutely honed and trained and able to compete and succeed. And why shouldn't they they deserve a better accolade than they got in Thailand. And so that's kind of that's an angle we're looking at from an advocacy point of view.
Well, it's good writing. I mean, I always, I guess from a songwriting point of view, it's always great when someone says that sounded like a Beatles song. You're like, yeah, great. But I always hate comparing writing to writing or magazines to magazines or movies to movies. But that was a good story. And I thought, wow, what place does this hold in other magazine pantheon comparisons? And I thought, well, I'm not going to do that. But then I looked at like a guy I know a little bit. Joe Cummings is in here writing on music. And I thought, well, he'll be writing on rock and roll. Let's see. And then he wrote on the jazz. And I thought, what a great overview. And from a guy who wrote Lonely Planet for 8 trillion years
superb, wasn't it?
Right. It's just like, this is very well done. And he's not going to let you down, right? I mean, he's a good writer.
Yeah. So, I did end up sort of kind of editing quite a bit of it. I mean, when I read Joe's piece, I thought, my God, this is
he's legit.
I can't touch this stuff.
So cheers to Joe. But then there was the Noodle article too. That was great, I thought. So just good stuff. And
the noodling, So she's a girl who does a blog. She's a very talented social media kind of marketing guru from Botswana. She's here living with her husband and a young child, and God knows what her story is. But I met her a couple of times. She's got a blog called Girl Gone Authentic. I read it. It's just an extraordinary piece of writing. And we met a few times, and I said, would you write a story? And my son has been asking me to do do a podcast called Just Noodling. And I've resisted. So I've said, well, you can have my title. Here you go, Just Noodling, do that. And she took that on and wrote that. And what a talented writer.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm actually thrilled. You know, there's stuff. I mean, I actually enjoyed reading pretty much every article. There's a couple of things in there. I'm not to say which I thought, oh, yeah.
Well, and your article had the chance of not interesting me, because I always feel bad when someone has a $5 trillion house and they live in it and it looks awesome. But I read that and I didn't feel envy or jealousy. And I thought, oh, this is a very interesting article, how you pitched this extravagantly beautiful home as opposed to, lifestyles of the rich and famous, which is always a little painful to go through. But so even that one, I thought, all right, I'm going to give you a thumbs up on that. So that passed. And so I got back and I thought, I supplement my, Atlantic or Harper's or Paris Review subscription, or, this fills a big space. And if it does it online or digitally, great, because I can accept that now. I guess what COVID taught me was I can read things online, so I can read the World Energy Report. Do I want to? No. But it's time to wake up. You're going to have to read your important things digitally. But to have this in hard copy is great, but to have it online now as well. And I think the length of these articles I was very pleased with the amount of information, like Joe's article on the jazz scene. I was like, this is awesome. And, I know he's a big fan of Smalls, but it was more than just that, right? So he didn't play favorites.
No.
He went out and got some names in there that are legit. So it's
a similar genre, a similar style of writing, not a similar style of writing, a similar thought process maps was the 10 street food restaurants across Thailand. I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, what the hell? Every single person in Thailand goes to J5. Russell Crowe turns up and he's standing there with J5 with a blowtorch, tucking some poor omelette and goggles on.
And gets on the front page of the paper.
I'm at the only street food restaurant in Thailand that's won a Michelin. She won the lottery, right? She won the TAT-backed Michelin lottery. And good luck to her. I'm sure I've never eaten there. I don't. It's not my kind of food. But it's nonsense in a way, right? I mean, everybody's turning up at J5. So I asked the writer if he could do, the real street food culture of Thailand.
Well, God bless her. I mean, hold on and do it while you can, because.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, she deserves a fantastic. I mean, I'm not criticizing.
Yeah, of
her.
course you're not.
I'm criticizing the fact that and it's down to the creativity of the media businesses as well. I'm never failed to be underwhelmed by, but when you meet people that run, run major news brands.
Wizard behind the curtain. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Well, good. Well, that's excellent. So we've covered a little bit of that. So I'm conscious of the value of your time as well. So Franco, I'm not going to ask how long you've been doing this, but Roman Anton podcast in 3 parts, as I said. I think that was an interview. I'm not sure if there's anything I missed that you wanted to bring up today, or there's some epic confession you wanted to make, because we love confessions on the Roman Anton podcast, but I don't think I'm going to get one. Or some obvious oversight that everyone else would have asked you, but I'm not smart enough to have asked you. So any of those?
No, I mean, I just enjoy a conversation, a chat, and I'm not really. I hope I wasn't plugging anything.
No, not at all. Totally legit.
I'm doing a lot more stuff, but.
Well, and I don't know you. I've known you for years, but I don't know you, and I was very pleased with this conversation, because there was a lot I wanted to ask over time about the history and publishing, but I think I got answers. But the second part of our podcast, we like to have people come in. So I told you before we started filming, Frank and I played against our good friend Ike a game of basketball.
Right.
And Frank got embarrassed. I won. No, I didn't win my game, but no, we both were horrible. And so
I know you didn't win.
we went in the Muay Thai ring 2 weeks ago with Supergirl.
You didn't win that?
No, she scared us all out. We were in there, and the kicks were so loud on her father's gloves that the corrugated tin on the ceiling was, it was just like, wow, that was amazing. We've done, Chef Jakob made a Chicago deep dish pizza for us, and then we had the lamb burgers and the Wagyu lamb. But he does halal cooking. He's out on Serinagrinder Road area, right. Fat Lamb. That was a lot of fun. But I was hoping that maybe you could read from here. Would that be something you'd be interested in doing? Because you have 2 pieces in here. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. So why don't we move without editing into the second part of the podcast. I'll slide your magazine Koktail across. Is there a website or a preferred venue to get this online, or the updates to this?
Yeah, that's a website. It's cocktailmagazine.com.
www.cocktailmagazine.com. And when you do it, Koktail, Cocktail Magazine, and you have LinkedIn presence as yourself, so I'm not going to belabor that one, but do you also have a LinkedIn connection for the magazine?
We have a LinkedIn connection, Media Imagination, but it's dormant. Oh, it's not really started
Okay.
up yet. If you get onto the website, you can find ways to download the magazine for
Good.
free.
Yeah, I saw that. And okay, any other connected or affiliated things you want to plug while we're doing it here? Websites or?
I should mention that I was part of the team that started Vogue and GQ in Thailand, which has done extremely well.
Yeah, good.
So, there is some.
Is there online stuff?
There is some reason for optimism. With this.
Vogue and GQ. So those are big deals here, and there's a whole. It's a Thai edition.
Yeah, they're both Thai language editions. And
Right.
We have websites, and we're going to pop along to. Shameless as I am, we're going to pop along to my favorite place. Maybe not.
Yeah, that's great. So we've got an exciting place to go in the third part that Nigel will introduce me to, because I've never been there, but that's cool. Well, that's interesting, because I have looked through these magazines, and that's not, I'm not saying I wouldn't normally, but the place where I do see them is when I go get my hair cut from time to time. And they are the Thai counterparts to their Western companions, and they're awesome, and they're thick, and they're hefty, and there's a lot of stuff in there. And so these are legitimate, massive, successful publications in Thailand, so good for you.
They're incredibly successful. I think both are the way market leaders in their genres.
Yeah.
From a business point of view, they've done very well indeed. Even though it is the Vogue is affiliate, it's a license agreement from Condé Nast, but I think at least 90% of what we do will be local content.
Yeah.
Same for GQ. They're quite different to any other GQs and Vogues around the world, I would imagine, although they absolutely maintain the integrity of the magazines. I'm thrilled with the success of those, to be honest.
Well, and my surprise at how little was Western stuff translated when I first looked at it surprised me. I was like, wow, this is a legitimate local international magazine. I didn't even know how to call it. I thought, this is well done. And the other time I'd only really seen that was in Italy with an L, I think. I was like, oh, this is an Italian version of a magazine I didn't even recognize. Like the people on the cover, I didn't know who they were. The models, I didn't.
Italian Vogue is sensational.
Right. I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
I thought it was just going to be, Brad Pitt and with an Italian title or something, but it was all different. And I thought,
that's one way of publishing licensed magazines. There are some magazines that do that. One was the Rob Report that was here. It was like that content you couldn't really do locally.
Right.
Sort of a beautiful yacht or something.
Right.
Aren't many being made locally.
Right, and the Rolex, that's sort of all.
There are people who do that.
Yeah.
And, is it relevant? I don't know.
Well done. I mean, so let's do this, and then we can close up the section. But I'm going to hand you your magazine back. I'm not going to thumbnail it. I think you've got it there. But this is part 2 of the Roman Anton podcast, ladies and gentlemen. This is Nigel Oakins at the helm, and you can read as much or as little as you would like, sir.
So you mentioned this part 2 is a skill, right? So
yes.
I have a skill in reading.
There we go. But you're holding the thing you're skillful in. So this is a man looking at his own book too, which is.
And I did
cool.
it. I actually did write it as well.
One of your staff.
Here we go. Let me have a go. See how far. Maybe
That's all right.
I'll try to get to the end.
Let's do the whole thing. Look, some of these are 3 hours long, so we haven't filled up that much time.
I'll try to read a bit quicker. How about that? Hey, to misquote William Faulkner, the past is not dead. It slouched over a martini at the cocktail bar. And while I am misquoting famous writers then, how about 1 tequila, 2 tequila, 3 tequila floor from one of the greatest and grouchiest of American comics, George Carlin, who just got better and grouchier with age. Age is a funny thing. I have a theory that when it comes to art, music, sport, and mathematics, but not comedy, that if you've not reached your creative best by the time you're 30, then you're never going to make it. I mean, name one popular musician whose songs got better as they got older. Tell me which physicist or mathematician came up with a theory that proved anything, let alone everything, or deciphered an unbreakable code past their 20s. It's just not happening, but that never stops us thinking if we keep at it, the best is yet to come. Sorry, it definitely isn't. Wait, you may say, since you quoted Faulkner, let me throw Lady Macbeth back at you. Yet who would have thought the old man to have so much blood in him? To that I say, look how badly that goes wrong when you see Mick Jagger still bouncing around the stage as he approaches his 80s. No, I'm sorry, we old folk at the bar should know our place and keep our wisdom to ourselves. Are magazines similar to mathematicians and musicians? I'm trying to think if those that have been around forever still have resonance or relevance. I recall Time used to be something that had global clout. It's still around, but starting to stumble like Mick. The Economist once had a place in every briefcase, but with the demise of the briefcase, it surely lost its pride of place. Does anyone even remember those society magazines with lots of high-sos and celebrity parties? No, of course not. As we move to more equality rather than celebrate the elite and those born into wealth. Nah, the only magazines that matter are those that have an attitude and take a position on inclusivity, fairness, and renewable sense of style. Magazines just like the first edition of Koktail you have just reached the back of. That said, hats off to the traditional news media brands that recently helped stick it to Facebook and Instagram by covering former Facebook insider Frances Haugen's whistleblowing efforts. Her expose of how Instagram deliberately targets the fears and anxieties of teenage girls and other vulnerable communities in order to build audience, engagement, and revenue was truly concerning. Facebook and Instagram are approaching the end of their youthful stage of life and will soon become middle-aged in social media terms. Will Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook survive into social media old age and still maintain its stranglehold on media budgets and the minds of a vast swathe of the global population? Or will it crash and burn, unable to undo the damage it now undoubtedly casts on large sections of society across a myriad of issues? Unless it changes its ways, either its future or society's looks bleak. Let me finish with another quote. Stage director Vincent Minnelli once wrote, "If anybody reads a story in a magazine or a book, different pictures compete in their minds." This is so true. Hopefully the first issue of Koktail has put some pictures in your mind to swirl around. I will have my second martini now, please.
All right. Well done. Look, I think it needs to be said, some people have an impact on the places they're in, and you moved to this one and you have impacted it. And that's what you've done here is you've made press accessible, kept it accessible, and now you're throwing this out and it has some social responsibility involved in it. And so way to go. I mean, you're one of those guys who goes to a town and does stuff for the better. And so it doesn't go without notice in the expat community, at least that I'm in, that you're a player in that regard and that's respected and appreciated. So thank you for that. Thanks for coming in today. We will head over to the Vogue Cafe, which is in a part of town that we'll describe later. But thanks a lot for that. That was very cool. I enjoyed talking to you today, Nigel.
I enjoyed it as well.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Franco. Let's shut her down for now. All right. Well, Nigel, here we are back at Vogue Cafe, and I'm looking outside at a train line that runs through the heart of Bangkok at the Ratchaprasong intersection. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And this is the Vogue Cafe?
It is.
Okay. For you have a personal interest in this, but it's a place that you like to come. I think this is in one of the great parts of town, right? So
yeah.
This is actually in not a mall, but it's affiliated to a hotel. So there's a series of stores here. So I guess you could call that a mall, but
yeah,
very nicely lit. Some excellent looking food on the menu. We're going to have some shortly, but also very cool looking place. Nice, open and airy.
Yeah. Thank you.
So this is magazines we were talking about that you've worked with in Thailand and in the region.
Well, in Thailand, Vogue in Thailand.
Right, so not an accidental name, right?
No, Vogue Cafe was part of the brand association,
Nice.
The relationship with Condé Nast, publishing Vogue magazine, and this is a brand extension.
Yeah.
And these covers are all Vogues from around the world, but many of them are ours.
Okay.
And so we've shot covers with Thai stylists, Thai photographers, Thai models. We've shot them
Nice.
overseas. We've had international models come to Thailand with Thai stylists and Thai photographers. So a whole mixture of, blending local and international and regional, and to the covers you see here.
And so, we're in a restaurant or we're in a coffee restaurant, we're in a large place. Is this a medium you're used to working in, serving food, and this is a little further afield from the magazines and newspapers, right?
No, I mean it's not. I'm not used to working in it, and obviously I don't work in it. But we felt that it was a great way of. This is a pop-up. We've got a 6 months period.
Understood.
So we're about just over 2 months into it. But the goal is, I think, to to build from our experiences here and look to see how we can continue to push the Vogue brand further into the Thai community through our license arrangements with Condé Nast. And it seems, obviously it needs to, we'd like it to work as a business, and so would Condé Nast, I'm sure. But there's an enormous benefit from the brand association to showing people that, Vogue is not just a magazine; it's also a very extensive social media platform. And and the same for the stuff talking about earlier is again, Vogue is also trying to move with the times and move forward. And so getting beyond just beautiful people on magazine covers and standing for something more in real life and society.
Well, that's interesting, because I imagine Condé Nast has to roll as an organization with it, and Vogue is part of that, so there's probably some benefits and some detractions with the corporate mother company, but they seem to be on top of their ESG, so I think it's probably helpful, right?
Yeah, I think like any of the big major brands that have been around for a long time, they have to continually keep to look for ways to stay relevant.
Yeah, so I mean, journalist, writer, cafe, foreign correspondence clubs. The foreign correspondence clubs in Asia seem important to me. I in particular reference the one in Phnom Penh, because I've worked throughout Asia, and that really seemed to have a lot of gravitas to it. Good meetings, good presentations, great place to go meet and have good drinks. I mean, it's a combination. Yeah. We're right next to one here, right?
Right, absolutely.
Right. Was that part of your scene or part of your network?
Not really in Thailand. I mean, I don't think they've ever quite got that level of gravitas you talked about for Cambodia, which is a pity. I wish they would somehow sort of discover their true position here. I mean, I spent a lot of time at the Foreign Correspondence Club in Hong Kong, and that's a phenomenal club.
Maybe a better one, right?
Yeah. I mean, but no disrespect to those guys. I mean, they've got a place. They do a great job with what they're doing, but it hasn't really. Maybe the foreign correspondent hasn't been quite such an important animal here as it has been in other cities in Asia. Maybe their time's yet to come. Yeah,
and you hope, but at the same time, it's expensive. It's part of a network that was expensive, and as I look at regional reporting replacing local reporting on television and on the internet, Bob, our correspondent in Hong Kong, reporting on Vientiane. I'm like, well, that's far away, right? And I'm not saying they can't report, but it's not close.
I mean, I saw something this week. It was Clarissa Ward of CNN reporting from Somalia, or somewhere. I think it was Somalia, where the floods were.
Right.
She said
she was in Waders.
Biblical nature. And to me, that was what real, true foreign. I mean, she's making a big name for herself as well. Of course. But I don't think she's intending to do that. Her quality of reporting is such that she's deserving to get the accolades she's getting. But there it was for you. It doesn't have to be a war correspondent. You're there, and you look at it and you think, oh my God, is it really that bad? And it's beyond bad, right? And there was the foreign correspondent within that environment. So I think let's hope there's more of a place for them, and the world doesn't become, we were talking a little bit earlier about Facebook images or Instagram or TikTok messages that you scroll through. I mean, the whole world would become just people taking photographs of themselves. It'd be awful.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if it's news gathering or information gathering, but I mean, the Koktail idea and the Vogue Thailand ideas, I mean, I've leafed through the Vogue magazine here, and it is largely Thai articles. It's in Thai for sure, but it's
In Thai, yeah.
Thai. You know, Koktail, Joe Cummins again on his ventures through the jazz cafes. You know, that takes some local awareness and then good writing, right? And so those are, you still need that. And so there, you know, I guess there's hope on the horizon, and you're bringing it to us. And like I said earlier, you know, every now and then you run across folks who are preserving and delivering on the goods, and I think that's what you do and what you're doing through Koktail, which is cool. And so good luck with that. You know, and when I look here, is this is a very sophisticated market concept that, whether or not I'm on board, serves a very good purpose, you know, for the organized press. Right?
Yeah, yeah,
You can be crass and craven and say they don't need the help, but yeah, they do, right? You know, for businesses to do well and survive, they need to think of new ways to do things. So I'm all on board on this. Food's good, location's awesome. You know, I love a place to read the newspaper, right?
I do that. I come here in the morning and sit
That's
down.
the Nigel table right there.
That's the Nigel table over
we'll
there.
We'll put a name plaque
I got
on
my
there.
Sunday Observer, which I get every Sunday, and it takes me about 4 days to read.
But you give it a shot there, right?
Give it a shot, yeah.
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 But great location. I like this area. I mean, on the corner you have the Erewhon Shrine, which is unique and odd for a lot of people. I like it. It has some recent history. The Foreign Correspondents Club is close. The Royal Bangkok Sports Club is close. But world-class, phenomenal shopping in this area. So if you come to Bangkok, you're going to find this place, whether or not you try, you're going to end up here. But it's a legitimate place to start to get comfortable in Bangkok, to me, to come over here and walk around and track it to your hotel. And if you're taking the BTS or the MRT, one's going by right now, you know, it's comfortable and safe and easy. It's harm-free. Still a lot of Thai character down here, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and so very cool area to say, to visit and to meet folks and to get contacts going and stuff, but a ton of shopping. And it's funny, there's even this NBK mall here that seems to have just about everything in one location. It's one of the oddities of Bangkok, but some really phenomenal new entries to the hotel market. Rosewood and the Park Hyatt are exceptional structures, right? New buildings,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Beautiful structures. So, you know, in terms of Thailand carving its niche in architecture, we've seen that Makason Tower go up, which is beautiful. We've seen Viraj Tower and the M Quartier, which are quite frankly stunning.
Yep.
You know, you may object to more shopping malls, but beautiful. And then some of the urban planning over at Benjikiti Park, connecting the parks with the Sky Pass or the bike trails.
That's really
Some great urban planning
nice.
in a place that I would say is not known for its urban planning.
No.
Right? So we can blame whoever we want for that, but you know, some good stuff. So I'm glad to see you're here. I mean, it's cool. It's a good idea, and it's a comfortable spot. So if you're in town, I'm not sure what camera I'm looking at here, but Vogue Cafe. What would you call this? Ratchaprasong intersection, or is it?
It is exactly that. It's part of the Erewhon Center.
Erewhon Center, E-R-A-W-A-N. It's a cool spot. Has a Hyatt hotel in it, and it has some good restaurants downstairs, some legit restaurants, and a lot of fun places to walk around. It's near some of our other favorite restaurants and hotels. We got the Anton, which has the Madison Steakhouse, which I love over there.
Right.
Beautiful lobby, right? So if you want to do casual and maybe pricey or nice, this is a good neighborhood to come in slowly to Thailand and check it out at a high level. But Vogue Cafe, you know, Nigel's pushing a product and a brand that has a lot of integrity in the local community, a lot of followers. So it's not happenstance that you have a good brand here and good brand recognition. So anything else you want to discuss about this neighborhood, or what you're doing around here, or connections you have, or have we covered everything today? We skipped the golf, right?
We did. You want to talk about golf for 1 minute?
Yeah, you've done an odd thing you mentioned to me, is you played all or most of the golf courses in Thailand on some of your days off?
Yeah. So I think it was 2007 we did a it was a year of not much activity for me, and so I thought it'd be nice to play 200 golf courses in Thailand and do a book called Thailand's Best Golf.
Did you do it?
Yeah, it came out. We sold 20,000 copies, and
Well, I wonder why I haven't seen that. I bet you I have leafed through it at some golf course.
yeah. Well, it was sponsored by Hong Kong Bank, so they took I can't remember, but maybe 60-70% of the copies went to them, and another 5,000 or 6,000 copies sold over a number of years, and it was someone was still talking about it this week, and asked me. And I'm not a really good golfer. I'm not a good golfer. People who play golf for me know that I'm not a good golfer. And what the hell? What the hell? Why would you do that? But it just seemed to me that it'd be nice to have a book that just said, where would you have the best golf experience, the best golf, the best service, the best layout, the best, And
You're pushing me to ask the question. Top 5? Did you rank them?
Yeah, so we did.
There we go. Can you do it?
Let me try and remember.
Now, Banyan wasn't alive in 2007.
No, it wasn't. We did a second edition.
My favorite course.
We did a second edition in 2011.
Still not alive.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, yes, it was just open. Right.
Yeah. So Banyan made it into the top 10, I think. I don't think it made it into the top 5. Let me try and remember it.
Lam Shabang?
That was probably 16 or 17.
Okay.
I'm guessing at numbers here, but so number 1 was Amata.
Amata, it's hard to beat, right? Pro Tour goes there. I saw. I saw
Tiger Woods has played there,
and great restaurant, great food.
Yeah, it's a good clubhouse. It's a beautiful layout. I played there yesterday actually, and it's better now than it was then. But it's got more competition now. I think we had on there. Number 2 was the Yachty Links, and they got pretty snotty about it. I remember them writing to me.
It's a private course. Ayutthaya is how I say it. You say Ayutthaya.
Ayutthaya.
It's a town just to the north of Bangkok.
Yeah, but no, it's not Ayutthaya. It's Ayutthaya. Ayutthaya Golf. Yeah.
So, however you find it, it's a private club to the north of Bangkok.
Yeah, and apparently you couldn't play it, and they believed as a non-member I couldn't have possibly played it. How dare I give an opinion on it? I played it 4 or 5 times with members, and it's a stunning course. But for me, at those days, I don't know what it's like. I haven't played it for quite a few years, but in those days, it wasn't really a fair challenge.
Yeah.
And there's not much, there's not much ambience if a golf course is empty. So to me, but it was sensational.
Yeah.
Number 3, I think, might have been Siam Country Club Old Course.
Hard course.
I had Alpine in there, maybe.
Alpine. Great course.
And I'm trying to think now. Red Mountain was pretty high.
So that's down south.
Yeah, Red Mountain.
That's in Phuket or Koh Samui?
That's in Phuket.
Phuket. So that's
I played the Samui course, which was the Singer golf course, Santiburi one.
So no Wahin courses in the top 10?
No.
Wahin?
I'm not sure if Black Mountain wasn't in there at the time because it wasn't that good when it launched. I didn't think. And so anyway, I mean, it was so much fun. But I did try. I didn't do them all on my own.
Yeah.
And so I did try to take a professional, I was hacking around, and I'd get the view from a good golfer as well. And we present, and also from a woman's perspective as well.
Yeah.
So, because some golf courses, the women's changing rooms are absolute crap. So I try to get everything involved in it.
It's an important detail to know, especially if you've got some.
So if you've got a bit of time, maybe we'll do another.
There we go. we'll need 6 months. The update.
Issue 3 together, yeah.
Well, that's great feedback. And look, not a great golfer, but love to play. It's fun here. Thailand's known for it, but those are definitely good recommendations.
Yeah.
Happy with that. At the same time, as I said, thanks. Yeah, slide them out. Looks awesome.
So these are the vegan burger sliders.
Go. Are you a vegan?
I am.
Jeez. I forget your name.
Tom. My name is Tom.
Tom, here we go. You're on. All right, so looking good. So the golfing, I mean, the rankings is tough, and it's funny if you play, but so many courses, right? So many good courses.
Oh yeah, Thailand is a match.
Beautiful, thank you.
That's also, I think, probably vegan.
Nice. So that's
we're not a vegan restaurant. I mean, there are these are probably the only 2.
Marigold? What are Oriental Pansy? I'm not sure what you call those.
Yeah, we have a little bit of color on there.
There we go. Wow, nicely done. you put it out here, get a look at it. It looks like a nice, yeah, beautiful. This is some good looking food here.
Yeah. It's tasty.
So good. Well, we covered that. Well, that's interesting. You did the book, so I'll keep my eye out for a copy. But those Siam courses, there's 4 of them now, or 5. I went and played one that had
definitely 4, and there's a 5th, I think, on the way, maybe.
Yeah, I played the 4th one, which was sort of
Rolling Hills.
Whew. I played
tough.
it last year in one of those windy days.
That would have been tough. That's a hard course.
It's a very hard course.
There's some other great new courses. Chi-Chan is pretty good in my opinion.
That seems to have pulled #1 ranking from Golf Digest.
I don't know. I didn't see that.
That's the one with the big Buddha figure out.
Yeah.
So that was a shocker to me.
Yeah. No, it's getting competitive here for the golf community.
Well, good. Well, there it is. It just goes to show you what Nigel knows. I know a little bit, and he knows a lot, and he knows a lot about a lot. He's been here a while, but he also pays attention. So we'll look for that golf book if we can find that, and maybe get
get it back into print again.
Get it back into print. But we're looking forward to the next updates to the magazine, Koktail. Nigel Oakins, everyone, and thank you again for doing this. It was a pleasure.
It's an absolute pleasure.
All right.
Good talking to you.
Yep. All right.
1, 2, 3, quiet.